My wife didn't slip. She was wrenched. Fingers like claws dug into her arm, dragging her from the pool as if she were contraband. Not a mother 8 months into a fragile pregnancy. Chlorine exploded upward, spattering my face, while the water stilled behind her. Stunned neighbors frozen mid-stroke, their phones rising in unison like a jury lifting its sentence. A voice tore through the humid air, shrill and merciless. "Trespassing! Board rules!" Emily lurched for the rail, knuckles white, her belly tightening as though her body itself was bracing against the assault. And in that breathless pause, before rage, before retaliation, the world around us became a courtroom, every lens and every stare already deciding guilt. "Step away from her," I said, my voice steady but loud enough for the lifeguard to flinch. My pulse thudded like a war drum in my ears. The woman in red ignored me, eyes darting at the camera phones, the queen of her little fiefdom. She didn't know the contract I'd been reading at 2 a.m., or the calls I'd already placed to county officials. She just saw another homeowner she thought she could humiliate. Here's the part their tormentor never expected. The pool isn't technically HOA property. The easement sits on city land, a fact I confirmed last week with the county records office. Her rules don't even apply here. I hadn't told her yet. Not until she crossed the line. And right now, she was ankle deep in her own mistake. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. "My name's Michael Carter," I said, stepping closer, feeling my wet sneakers grip the concrete. "Civil rights attorney. This is my wife, and you just laid hands on a pregnant woman. On public property." My voice didn't rise. It dropped lower, calmer, like a gavel about to fall. She blinked, her smirk flickering for the first time. Around us, phones kept recording, every pixel a receipt. This pool wasn't just water and tiles. It was the one place Emily could exercise safely after her doctor warned her about swelling and blood pressure. We'd lost our first child at 26 weeks. Swimming had become her sanctuary, her doctor-prescribed lifeline. Every morning, she held the rail, breathing slow, counting strokes like a promise to the baby still growing inside her, and Brenda's hands had ripped that promise apart. I felt the burn of chlorine and anger in my nose. My father used to tell me, never swing until the law is already on your side. He'd fought evictions in our old neighborhood and lost too many battles because he'd gone in unprepared. I wasn't going to repeat that. I'd spent weeks documenting their tormentors' harassment, letters, fines, threats, every petty demand about our flower beds, our mailbox, now this pool. She had crossed the line on camera, in public, with a crowd. Emily clung to me, shivering despite the heat. "It's okay," I whispered to her, but my eyes stayed locked on the woman in red. Thomas Vega, the security guard, hovered by the gate, his jaw tight. He'd watched the whole thing. He looked like he wanted to speak, but swallowed it back, glancing at Brenda's clipboard as if it were a weapon. I saw the conflict flash across his face. Duty, fear, conscience. That look would matter later. The crowd's murmurs swelled. Someone said, "Call the cops." Someone else muttered, "That's assault." The HOA president straightened her blazer, trying to regain the stage. "Board meeting will address this," she hissed, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. She didn't know I'd already set things in motion with the county attorney's office. Outside authority, criminal charges. She thought she held the rule book. She didn't know she was playing on my turf. I guided Emily to a lounge chair, crouched to check her breathing, and then stood again. "You're finished, Brenda," I said quietly. "This isn't your pool, and this isn't your day." Phone stayed up. Thomas's hand twitched near his radio. Her eyes flicked to the gate, calculating. I didn't move, not yet. This had to be public, undeniable, on record. One step at a time. Our story is about to show you exactly how a homeowner fights back when an HOA crosses the line. The sharp tang of chlorine lingered on my skin and clothes long after we left the pool. Upstairs, Emily stood beneath the shower's hiss, trying to scrub away the memory of fingers that had no right to touch her. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a fan of violation, slips spread like a rigged deck, each one stamped with some petty grievance. Unauthorized decorations, improper parking, guest restrictions. I'd treated them as background noise for too long, brushing them aside as if they were nothing more than paper gnats. That neglect was my first real mistake. 2 weeks before the pool incident, she'd fined us for blocking common property because Emily's car door had been open for more than 5 minutes while she unloaded groceries. I'd thought it was petty harassment. Now I knew better. This wasn't just the HOA president flexing. It was a pattern. I opened my laptop and pulled up the residents' forum. Post after post told the same story. Elderly neighbors threatened with liens, families fined for swing sets, single mothers ticketed for noise violations when their toddlers played outside. Every story had the same name at the bottom of the notice: Brenda Holt, president. I scrolled past one entry that stopped me cold. It was from Thomas Vega, the same security guard who had looked away while the woman in red yanked Emily out of the water. He'd posted anonymously, but the phrasing was his. He described unlawful detainment of guests at the pool gate and pressure from the board to enforce rules that don't exist. He hadn't signed his name, but I knew it was him. He was trying to reach out without burning his bridge. I clicked into county records. She had filed liens against 3 homes last month, none of them authorized by a majority board vote. It was a classic overreach, the kind of move that would get a county attorney interested. My pulse steadied. This was my terrain. As I pieced together screenshots and records, the silence of the neighborhood pressed heavier than the files in front of me. This was no longer just about protecting my wife. It was about breaking the spell that had kept every doorstep quiet. The pool kept flashing in my mind, once meant as a refuge, a shared breath of summer. Now it stood as a stage where authority had twisted itself into spectacle, a place where fear rippled louder than the water. Outside, dusk was falling. Porch lights flickered on up and down the cul-de-sac. I could almost feel the fear behind those windows. People had seen what the HOA president did to Emily. They were afraid they'd be next. Emily came down the stairs, wrapped in a blanket, her hair damp. "She's not going to stop," she whispered. I didn't answer right away. I was staring at Thomas's anonymous post again. It wasn't just a confession, it was a lifeline. I saved everything, screenshots, forum posts, county records, into a folder. My legal instincts were screaming. This was actionable. But outside authority needed more than my word. They needed a pattern. They needed proof. And Thomas Vega, whether he realized it or not, had just handed me a thread to pull. I stood up and looked at the pool key on the counter. It wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was a symbol of everything their tormentor had twisted. Access, safety, community. She'd turned a shared space into a weapon. I clenched the key until it left a mark in my palm. "She thinks she's untouchable," I said quietly. Emily looked up, and for the first time since the pool, she smiled, just barely. "She's not," I added. In that moment, my path was clear. This wouldn't be a quiet complaint or a strongly worded letter. It would be an intervention. Brenda Holt had crossed a line into criminal territory. I was going to make sure someone with a badge and subpoena power knew it. The clubhouse smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. It was nearly midnight, and the glass doors rattled softly in the wind coming off the lake. I'd chosen this time on purpose. The woman in red never lingered after 10. Only the night security shift remained, and Thomas Vega was always on it. He was at the desk when I walked in, slouched over a clipboard, his uniform shirt wrinkled. The glow from his monitor lit his face a pale blue. He didn't look up right away, but I saw his thumb tap against the side of the pen, nervous rhythm, like a drummer counting time. "You're not supposed to be here after hours," he said finally, voice low. Not hostile, just tired. I set a manila envelope on the counter between us. "We need to talk." He glanced at the envelope, then at the door, then back at me. His jaw clenched. His eyes flicked to the security camera in the corner, then back to the envelope. His left foot shifted backward, heel scraping against the tile. Every motion screamed, "I shouldn't be doing this." "You posted on the forum," I said quietly. "I know it was you." His head snapped up. A flicker of fear crossed his face, then embarrassment. He stood straighter but didn't speak. His right hand went to his neck, fingers pressing just under the collar, an unconscious shield. "You described the detainments at the pool gate," I continued. Pressure from the board, rules that don't exist. That's not nothing, Thomas. That's evidence. His mouth opened, closed. He swallowed hard. The pen in his hand clicked once, twice. He was practically vibrating now, caught between fight and flight. I pushed the envelope closer. Inside were the screenshots, the county records, the violation slips. Proof that the HOA president wasn't just enforcing rules, she was fabricating them. If this goes to court, they'll subpoena everything anyway. You can stand on the right side now, or get dragged later. He exhaled through his nose, a sharp, quiet hiss. His shoulders rose, then fell. For a moment, he looked like a man about to jump into freezing water. "You don't get it," he muttered. "I've got 2 kids, health insurance through this job. Brenda." He cut himself off, lips pressed tight. I did get it. Fear wasn't abstract for him. It was rent, food, a medical bill away from disaster. "I'm not here to make you a martyr," I said. "I'm here because you're the only one who can corroborate what she did to my daughter, and to all of us." He leaned on the counter, head down, palms flat. His fingers spread, then curled into fists. His knuckles whitened. When he looked up again, his eyes were wet but fierce. "You think she won't find out? She knows everything." I lowered my voice. "Then let's make sure someone bigger than the woman in red knows first." He blinked, jaw working. His foot stopped tapping. The pen in his hand stilled. Body language shifted from retreat to consideration. Tiny, but real. "What exactly are you asking?" "Statement, affidavit, whatever you're comfortable with. You tell the county investigator what you've seen. I'll handle the rest." He stared at me for a long beat. The lobby clock ticked loud in the silence. Finally, he blew out a shaky laugh, one with no humor. "You lawyers," he said, "always got a file ready." I didn't smile. "She put her hands on my kid, Thomas. You watched it happen. This isn't about paperwork. It's about stopping her." His shoulders slumped. For a moment, he looked at the envelope again, then at me. "I don't know," he whispered, but his fingers moved toward the envelope. Anyway, brushing the edge. I knew then I had him, at least a crack in the wall of fear. That was all I needed, a crack. Outside, the wind howled against the glass doors. Inside, Thomas Vega's hand hovered over the evidence that could end Brenda Holt's reign. His body still said no, but his eyes, their tremor of resolve, said maybe. The county office building rose like a block of gray stone against the bright morning sky. Glass doors opened with a soft hiss, and a rush of cold air hit me as I stepped inside. Emily's hand squeezed mine, tiny fingers, still bandaged from where their tormentor had yanked her away from the pool. I crouched to meet her eyes. "It's okay," I whispered. "We're making it right." We took the elevator up to the 3rd floor, code enforcement and civil rights complaints. The walls were lined with posters about tenant rights, whistleblower hotlines, and discrimination policies. It smelled faintly of paper and old coffee. My briefcase felt heavier than usual. Inside were the violation slips, photographs, the HOA bylaws Brenda had doctored, and now Thomas's anonymous forum posts, printed and time-stamped. A clerk in a navy sweater looked up from behind bulletproof glass. "Next," she called. I stepped forward. "Michael Carter, I'm here to file an emergency complaint against the Lakewood HOA board." She slid a clipboard through the slot. "Fill this out. Someone will call you." I didn't take it. "This isn't a routine violation. A minor was physically removed from a public pool. False rules, fabricated fines. Your office has jurisdiction under County Code 1841. Her eyebrows went up. She glanced at the clock on the wall, then at my briefcase. "One moment," she said, disappearing through a door. Emily fidgeted beside me. I knelt again, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "Remember what I told you? We're not the ones in trouble." She nodded, but didn't speak. When the door opened again, a man in a gray suit emerged, mid-40s, badge clipped to his pocket. He extended his hand. "Inspector Robert Klein. I handle HOA compliance cases." I shook it. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice." He led us into a small conference room, round table, stack of forms, faint hum from the fluorescent lights overhead. "Tell me what happened." I started from the pool incident, laying out each escalation, the fabricated rules, the threats of fines, the physical removal. As I spoke, I slid documents across the table one by one. Klein scanned them quickly but thoroughly, making small notes in the margins. "And this security officer?" he asked, tapping the printed forum post. "Thomas Vega," I said. "He witnessed everything. He's afraid of retaliation, but he's already left a digital trail. With a subpoena, you'll have confirmation." Klein's eyes narrowed. "You're an attorney?" "Civil rights." He leaned back, exhaling. "Good. Makes my job easier." Emily shifted in her chair. I reached over and rested my hand on her shoulder. "I want to ensure no other kid in that neighborhood goes through what she did." Klein nodded slowly. "You're not the first complaint about Lakewood, but this," he tapped the photographs. "This is the first with evidence." My pulse quickened. "Then let's move." He gave a thin smile. "County procedure isn't instant, but I can initiate an immediate inspection under Section 12.3. If your witness cooperates, we can open a formal enforcement action. That means fines against the board, possible criminal referral for assault." That was the wedge I'd been waiting for. "I'll bring you Thomas Vega," I said. Klein raised an eyebrow. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." As we stood to leave, Emily looked up at me. "Does that mean the HOA president can't touch us anymore?" she asked softly. I bent down to her level. "It means she's about to have a very bad week." We walked out into the sun, and for the first time in days, I felt air move freely in my chest. The county wasn't a magic bullet, but it was pressure their tormentor couldn't control. All I needed was for Thomas to step over the line and tell the truth. My phone buzzed as we reached the car. "Unknown number," I answered. A low voice said, "It's Thomas. We need to talk." The guard booth at Lakewood's entrance glowed like a dim lantern in the dusk. A single fluorescent tube flickered overhead, throwing stripes of light across Thomas Vega's face. He sat hunched over the desk, uniform collar loosened, hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup. When I stepped inside, the smell of stale coffee and wet asphalt hit me. "You shouldn't be here," he said without looking up. "I'm not here to argue," I replied. "I'm here because you called." He lifted his eyes, red-rimmed and restless. "They're watching me. Brenda, she had the board vote to install cameras on this booth. Claims it's for safety. It's for me." I glanced at the corner. Sure enough, a new dome camera blinked red. "Recording. Always." I reached into my jacket, pulled out a slim tablet. "County's inspector needs proof the HOA president's violating civil code. We can't move without it." Thomas's hand trembled slightly as he pushed a folder across the desk. I printed some logs, deliveries, maintenance calls, visitor passes. "Look at the dates. They don't match." I flipped the folder open. The pages listed names and times, but entire blocks had been whited out. Whole sections gone. "This is her? She's been altering the digital logs, using the HOA admin account. I'm the one who has to sign them after." "Why not refuse?" His jaw clenched. "Because I need this job, and because she has something on me." I waited. Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the hum of the overhead light. Finally, he whispered, "Last year, my brother borrowed my badge after hours, got into a fight at the clubhouse. They threatened to press charges unless I cooperated. She never filed them, but she reminds me every week." There it was, the hook in his side. I closed the folder and slid it back. "Thomas, what you've given me already is enough to start. The county can subpoena the system logs. They'll match your testimony to the digital footprint." He stared at me. "And if she releases the footage of my brother, then I'll represent him pro bono, and I'll bury the HOA president under discovery requests so deep she won't have air to breathe. But I can't do it without you." Thomas swallowed hard, then reached under the desk. He pulled out a small external hard drive. This is everything, not just logs, audio from the intercom, board orders, maintenance memos. I started copying them when I realized what she was doing. I figured someday. He trailed off. I took the drive carefully, feeling the weight of it. Someday is now. Outside, a car slowed near the gate, a black SUV. The window rolled down, and a familiar profile appeared. Brenda Holt, sunglasses reflecting the booth's light. She gave a small, cold smile as the gate lifted automatically. Thomas stiffened. "She knows?" "Not yet," I said, "but she will." The SUV rolled through and vanished into the neighborhood. The gate clanged shut behind it. I turned back to Thomas. "Meet me tomorrow at the county office. Inspector Klein wants you there. You'll be under whistleblower protection once you sign." He looked like a man about to step off a cliff. "If I do this, I lose my job." "If you don't, she keeps hurting people," I said quietly. For a moment, his shoulders sagged. Then he nodded. "All right, tomorrow." I slid the hard drive into my briefcase and clasped it shut. The hum of the fluorescent tube seemed louder now. Outside, the night smelled like wet earth and chlorine drifting from the pool where it had all begun. Walking back to my car, I felt the momentum shift under my feet. This wasn't just a complaint anymore. This was evidence, leverage, and a living witness. She had no idea the ground beneath her was starting to crack. The county inspector's office was nothing like the marble courthouse I'd imagined. Fluorescent light hummed above beige walls, and the scent of old paper mingled with burnt coffee from a forgotten pot. A laminated sign read, "Code Enforcement, please sign in." Thomas stood beside me, pale as chalk, his security badge clipped loosely to his belt. Inspector Klein emerged from a side door, a lean man in a navy shirt, eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. "Mr. Ramirez, Mr. Vega, this way." His tone was clipped, no wasted words. Inside his office, the blinds were drawn. A single file folder sat on the desk, already thick with printouts. Klein gestured at the two chairs. "You've both made serious allegations against Lakewood HOA. I need to know if you're ready to go on record." Thomas shifted, glancing at me. Yes, I am." I slid the external hard drive across the desk. "This contains digital logs, audio files, and maintenance orders Thomas copied. We believe the HOA president, Brenda Holt, is altering records to justify unlawful enforcement actions." Klein plugged in the drive, his fingers moving over the keyboard. "If this checks out, it's criminal tampering." He glanced up. "You're aware of the risk, Mr. Vega?" Thomas nodded stiffly. "I can't let them keep doing this." Klein's brow furrowed as lines of code and spreadsheets filled his monitor. "These aren't just tampered logs. Look here." He turned the screen toward me. "Service orders for private security patrols billed to residents without board approval. Thousands of dollars shifted monthly. This is misappropriation of funds. She's funneling HOA money to off-book contractors." Thomas exhaled sharply. "I didn't even know that part." "She's exposed herself," I said quietly. "We can tie this to the incident at the pool. Unlawful detainment, misappropriation, tampering." Klein began printing documents. "I'll open a formal investigation today. Mr. Vega, you'll be under whistleblower protection effective immediately." For the first time since I'd met him, Thomas's posture eased. "Thank you," he whispered. My phone buzzed. I glanced down and froze. A text from my wife. "She's at the house. Brenda, with another board member." I stood, adrenaline firing through my veins. "We have to go, now." Klein looked up. "What's happening?" "Retaliation," I snapped. "She's confronting my wife." Thomas pushed back his chair. "I'm coming." We bolted from the office through the waiting area where a clerk glanced up nervously. Outside, the air was heavy with oncoming rain. My car was parked at the curb. We piled in, doors slamming, engine roaring to life. As we sped toward Lakewood, thunder rolled in the distance. My hands tightened on the wheel until my knuckles went white. Every second felt like an hour. Images flashed. My wife at the pool, clutching her belly. Her cold smile at the gate. Thomas handing me the hard drive. Thomas broke the silence. "She's escalating. She must have realized what I gave you." "She's making her last mistake," I muttered. When we turned onto our street, my stomach clenched. Their tormentor's black SUV was parked across my driveway, hazard lights blinking. Another sedan idled behind it. Two board members stood on the porch, one filming with a phone, the other gesturing angrily at my front door. Thomas hissed, "She brought a camera crew?" "Not a crew," I said, "but she wants a spectacle. She thinks intimidation works in daylight." I parked 2 houses down. "Stay here," I told Thomas. He shook his head. "No, you'll need me as a witness." Rain began to spit across the windshield. I unbuckled, feeling the hard drive in my briefcase like a heartbeat. Klein had enough to open a case, but only if we made it through tonight intact. As I stepped out of the car, the smell of wet concrete and cut grass filled my lungs. The woman in red turned, her phone raised. "Mr. Ramirez!" she called, voice sugar sweet over the rain. "We need to discuss your violations." I walked up the sidewalk, water soaking my shoes, my pulse steady and hard. This wasn't a homeowner cowering before a board. This was a man holding the detonator to her whole scheme. The neon sign of the diner flickered against the wet pavement, casting red and blue light over the empty parking lot. I'd picked this place because it was 20 miles outside Lakewood and open all night. Thomas's car was already there, parked crooked, engine still running. Inside, the air was warm, heavy with the smell of coffee and fried onions. A jukebox hummed faintly in the corner. We slid into a booth near the back where no one could overhear. Thomas clutched a manila envelope like it might dissolve if he loosened his grip. His eyes were rimmed red from lack of sleep. I took off my coat, water dripping onto the vinyl seat. "You said you had something." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I can't keep this anymore." He pushed the envelope across the table. "These are copies of everything. Real service orders, board votes that never happened, security camera logs, and something else." I opened the flap. Inside were printed screenshots, maintenance contracts, even cell phone photos of checks. My pulse quickened as I scanned the top sheet. Unapproved security patrols billed to residents. "This proves misappropriation," I said quietly. Thomas shook his head. "That's just part of it." He reached into his jacket and produced a small digital recorder. "I started recording the HOA president after she threatened me 2 weeks ago." I froze. "You recorded her?" He pressed play. Her voice crackled from the speaker, unmistakable. "I don't care if the bylaws allow it or not, Thomas. We run this place. People don't push back, they pay. And if that Ramirez guy thinks he can..." He stopped the playback with a trembling finger. "It goes on. She admits ordering me to falsify reports about your wife at the pool. She told me to log it as aggressive trespassing." My stomach turned cold. She wanted to frame Emily? "She told me to write that your wife cursed at me, threatened me. None of it happened. And..." He dropped his gaze. "I did it. I changed the log." I exhaled slowly. "But now you're undoing it." He nodded. "I've already emailed the originals to Inspector Klein. He called me after you left his office. He says I'm under whistleblower protection, but I still feel like they're watching me." "You're doing the right thing," I said. "This will end her career, maybe worse." Thomas's hands shook around his coffee cup. "You don't know the HOA president? She's connected. She brags about a cousin in the DA's office." "That doesn't matter. Once Klein has these, it's out of her hands." He looked at me, eyes haunted. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just needed the job." "I get it." I closed the envelope and pushed it back to him. "Keep this with you until morning. Meet Klein at the county building at 9 sharp. He'll take your sworn statement and the evidence." Thomas stared at the envelope, then at me. "Why are you helping me? I'm part of this." "Because you're the only reason my wife isn't still a rumor on some HOA incident report. You're the crack in their wall." He blinked hard, then slid the envelope back across the table. "No, you take it. If I don't show up tomorrow, you'll still have it." I hesitated, then tucked it into my briefcase. The weight felt heavier than it should. "You'll show up," I said. Outside, a truck rumbled past on the highway, its headlights sweeping across the diner windows. Thomas flinched. "Hey," I said softly. "Look at me." He did. "They're bullies with paperwork, that's all. We've got the law, we've got the truth, and now we've got your voice. That's how we win." Thomas's lips tightened into something like a smile. "Then let's win." We sat there a moment longer, the jukebox changing songs to something slow and mournful. My phone buzzed. A message from Klein. "Moving fast. Meet me in the morning with Vega." I closed my eyes, feeling the first edge of relief since the pool. For the first time, victory wasn't just a plan. It was real. The glow of my desk lamp threw long shadows across the stacks of files, affidavits, and property maps. Emily slept upstairs, the soft creak of the old house settling, reminding me why we fought so hard to live here. I had Thomas's recordings on one screen, the security logs on another, and a legal pad full of notes. Every line I drew across the paper tightened the noose around Brenda Holt. I clicked play again, our tormentor's voice slamming into my ears. "We run this place." My thumb hovered over the pause button, but I forced myself to listen through, every word a nail in her case. On the other screen, Inspector Klein's email blinked open. "Need sworn affidavits. Need them tonight." I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. This was my territory. Evidence, filings, procedure. She'd dragged my wife out of a pool, but she'd just stepped into a court she couldn't bully. I began drafting the complaint to the county civil rights unit. Each paragraph was a blade: unlawful detainment, assault, falsification of records, misappropriation of funds. Thomas's statement would anchor the entire filing. Klein would forward it to the DA's Special Prosecutions Division before dawn. My phone vibrated, a text from the neighbors' group chat. We saw Thomas go into that diner. What's happening? They were restless, ready. Over the last week, they'd started to believe what I'd been saying about the board. They wanted to act. I typed back, "Be ready for a meeting tomorrow evening. This ends soon." The plan unfurled in my head. First, secure Thomas's sworn statement and digital evidence at Klein's office. Second, file the criminal complaint immediately. Third, notify the residents before the HOA president could spin a new story. And, last, the board meeting scheduled for Thursday. Use the room, the crowd, and the cameras to make her accountability public. I printed out the maps of Lakewood. She had quietly extended HOA patrol zones onto easement property owned by the county, a jurisdictional line she shouldn't have crossed. Klein's people could hit her with trespass and impersonation of an officer charges. Emily's footsteps creaked at the top of the stairs. "You're still awake," she murmured, coming into the doorway. Her face was pale but calmer than it had been days ago. "I'm almost done," I said softly. "Tomorrow it moves." She looked at the screen showing Thomas's recording, then at the stack of affidavits. "Do you trust him?" "I trust his fear," I said. "That's enough for now." She walked in, resting a hand on my shoulder. "I hate that this is what it takes." "So do I." I covered her hand with mine. "But it's going to protect more than just us." The printer spat out the last page of the complaint. I stacked it neatly, clipped it, and slid it into a slim folder. My heart thumped as I sealed the envelope. This was no longer a fight over a pool. It was a fight over who got to define safety in this neighborhood. My laptop chimed, a secure upload confirmation from Klein's server. He had the files now. I sent him a text. "Affidavit draft ready. Thomas will sign at 9 a.m. He responded instantly. "County DA on standby. Bring both of you." I sat back, staring at the screens. In the reflection of the monitor, my own eyes looked harder, colder. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was counsel, strategist, witness. The woman in red had no idea what was coming. The phone buzzed again. A neighbor, Melissa, from the corner house. "We're with you. Say the word." I smiled grimly. "Tomorrow night," I typed. "Bring everyone." Emily squeezed my shoulder, then kissed the top of my head. "Come to bed soon." "I will," I said, though I stayed seated as she left. I glanced at the printed complaint one last time, feeling its weight. All the outrage, all the humiliation of that afternoon at the pool, compressed into legal paragraphs that could end an empire of petty power. If you're glad the truth's coming out, hit like right now. I shut down the screens one by one. Tomorrow we'd move from planning to action. Tomorrow Brenda Holt would discover what it felt like to be on the other side of a record. The county civil rights unit sat in an old sandstone building with a brass plaque so dull it barely reflected the morning sun. I parked 2 blocks away, a deliberate choice, fewer HOA eyes. Thomas was already waiting at the curb, shoulders hunched, his worn leather jacket zipped up despite the heat. "You sure about this?" he asked as he climbed into my passenger seat. His eyes darted around like a man scanning for snipers. "I'm sure," I said, sliding a manila folder across to him. "This is your affidavit. Klein will walk you through it. Once you sign, it's on record." Thomas swallowed hard, flipping the folder open. Brenda's name sat at the top of every page like a brand. "She's going to know it's me." She already suspects, I replied. But the difference is, after today, she won't have the power to touch you. We drove in silence. My fingers tapped the steering wheel, rehearsing the sequence of filings and notifications in my head. At exactly 11 a.m., Klein would transmit the complaint to the DA's office. At noon, I'd send a confidential notice to every resident, not gossip, not rumor, but fact. At 7, our meeting. Inside the building, the air smelled of copy toner and old paper. Klein met us at the security checkpoint, his gray suit immaculate, his eyes sharp. "Michael, Mr. Hargrove." He extended his hand to Thomas. "Let's make this official." Thomas's hands trembled as he shook, but his voice steadied. "Let's do it." Klein led us to a small conference room. The blinds were drawn. On the table lay a digital recorder, a stack of affidavits, and a signature pad. Klein gestured. "Mr. Hargrove, read through this. When you're ready, sign. I'll notarize and file immediately." Thomas sat, scanning the pages. His jaw clenched at certain lines. "This is everything I told you?" "Everything and more," I said quietly. "Your dates, her orders, the altered patrol maps." He exhaled, picked up the pen, and began to sign. Each stroke of ink felt like a drumbeat. Klein slid the signed sheets into a scanner, tapping commands on his laptop. "Uploading now." I pulled out my phone, opening the resident's encrypted chat. "Official complaint filed. Charges pending. Meeting tonight at 7 p.m. Bring phones, bring neighbors." My thumb hovered over the send button. Then I pressed. Within seconds, replies flooded back. Emojis of fists, hearts, fire, a collective pulse. The neighborhood was awake. Thomas pushed back from the table, face pale but relieved. "It's done?" "It's done," Klein confirmed. "Within an hour, the DA's Special Prosecutions Unit will review. I've also flagged the county sheriff's department about the patrol overreach. If they want to play cop, they're going to meet real cops." I clasped Thomas's shoulder. "You did the right thing." We left the building into the blazing noon sun. My phone vibrated constantly. Neighbors sharing screenshots, local journalists DMing for details. The story was already bleeding out. In the parking lot down the street, a half-dozen residents waited. Melissa waved, her toddler perched on her hip. "We saw the notice," she called. "We're ready tonight." I nodded, walking toward them. "It's bigger than just the pool. They've been overstepping into county land. Klein's involved. By this time tomorrow, Brenda Holt won't be able to touch anyone." A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Relief, rage, anticipation. Thomas stood a little apart, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. I caught his eye and gave a slight nod. He managed a half smile. 7 sharp at the rec center, I said to the group. Phones charged, cameras rolling. We're going to do this by the book and by the law. No shouting matches, just facts and a spotlight. Melissa lifted her chin. What about our tormentor? She'll show, I said. She won't be able to resist defending herself. And when she does, I glanced back at Thomas. We'll have the record. We dispersed quickly, not wanting to draw too much attention. As I walked back to my car, a breeze rustled the map folded in my jacket pocket. The easement boundary, Brenda's fatal overreach. Tonight I'd lay it on the table in front of every resident. My phone buzzed again. Klein, DA greenlit, sheriff will attend as observer. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the information sink in. This was no longer just my fight. The county itself was stepping onto the field. I looked up at the sky, a hard, cloudless blue. By nightfall, this neighborhood would feel a crack of light in the walls the HOA president had built. By 6:30, the sun was sliding low, painting the rec center's brick walls in a dull copper glow. I parked in the far lot, heart thudding, steady but hard. Through the glass doors, I could already see residents inside, folding chairs scraping across the polished floor. Kids darted between legs, parents murmuring in low voices. Thomas stood near the vending machines, tie crooked, eyes scanning the room like a man about to testify in court. When he spotted me, he straightened. Everyone's here, he said, more than I expected. I clapped his shoulder. Good. That's exactly what the woman in red didn't want. A crowd she can't control. I pulled out the folded easement map and the copy of Klein's confirmation email. These weren't props, They were shields. Tonight wasn't about speeches. It was about documentation under light. Melissa waved from the front row, holding her toddler close. "They're whispering she's bringing her lawyer," she hissed when I approached. "Perfect," I said. "Let her bring a choir if she wants. Klein and the sheriff's observer will be here in 10. At the back of the room, a portable PA system hummed to life. Neighbors set up 2 microphones and a laptop for the projector. The glow of dozens of phones lit the dimming room like a constellation. Then the glass doors slammed open. Brenda Holt strode in, heels clicking sharp against the tile. Her tailored blazer was a shade too bright, her smile too thin. Behind her trailed a young man in a navy suit, clutching a legal pad. "Ladies and gentlemen," the HOA president began, voice pitched high. "This is an unauthorized gathering. The board does not recognize—" I stepped forward, voice even. "This is a residents' meeting, Brenda, open to the public under the bylaws. You're free to stay and listen." A ripple of laughter, low but electric, moved through the chairs. Our tormentor's eyes flickered. She adjusted her cuff. "I'll be taking notes for the record." "That's a good idea," I said. "So will we." Thomas shifted beside me, his face pale but set. He whispered, "She looks nervous." "She should be," I murmured back. "She thinks she can spin this. She has no idea Klein is here." As if on cue, the side door opened and Inspector Klein entered with a county sheriff's deputy in plain clothes. Conversations hushed. Klein gave a slight nod, no theatrics, and took a seat near the center aisle. She saw him and froze mid-sentence. The young lawyer leaned toward her, whispering fast. She stiffened, lips pressed tight. I took the microphone. My voice didn't need to rise. The room was already with me. For months, our board has acted beyond its authority. Tonight we show the evidence. We show the easement. We show the patrol orders. And we do it with county oversight present. Gasps. Phones lifted higher. The HOA president tried to cut in, but the crowd's murmur swallowed her words. I clicked the projector remote. The first slide appeared. A high-resolution scan of the patrol directive with Brenda's signature. A low hiss rolled through the room like air leaving a tire. "Last week," I continued, "my pregnant wife was dragged from our pool by a security guard acting under this directive. Tonight, the county will address whether that was lawful, and you, the residents, will decide whether this board still deserves your trust." Melissa called out, "We stand with you!" And the crowd echoed, a ragged but powerful chorus. The HOA president grabbed the microphone from the second stand, voice sharp. "This is defamatory. Security acted under—" Klein rose slowly, holding up a hand. "Ms. Holt, please sit. You'll have your opportunity after the county reviews." It was a small gesture, but seismic. The HOA president's face blanched. The young lawyer tugged her sleeve, urging her back to her chair. She sat, hands clenched, knuckles white. I stepped aside, letting the next slide fill the screen. The easement map, boundaries clearly marked. The projector light cast it across my hands like a battle standard. Thomas moved closer, whispering, "She's cracking." "Not yet," I said quietly. "But she's close." In the back, neighbors began whispering about a vote, a recall. The momentum was real, palpable. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was theirs. I closed with a single line. "Tonight is the first step in taking back our neighborhood lawfully, openly, and together." The room erupted. Applause, shouts, phone cameras flashing. Klein's expression stayed neutral, but his eyes flicked to me, with the faintest nod. And across the aisle, Brenda Holt sat frozen, watching her authority dissolve under the glow of her own signature projected on the wall. The rec center no longer felt like a neighborhood hall. It felt like a courtroom with no ceiling. Folding chairs had been pushed back to make room for a crush of bodies. People stood along the walls, phones held high, live streams already rolling. The faint hum of the projector gave everything a courtroom echo, even though we were still inside a municipal rec hall. I stood at the front table, papers spread like cards. My hands were steady now, not because the fight was over, but because it was finally public. Beside me, Thomas wiped his palms on his pants and kept his eyes on the crowd, like he couldn't believe he was part of this. Klein rose from his seat in the middle row, his badge clipped to his belt now visible. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, voice smooth but carrying. The county has reviewed the documents provided. These patrol orders and the board's actions will be forwarded to the district attorney's office for further investigation. The room broke into a low roar. Their tormentor shot to her feet, face flushed. "This is absurd," she snapped. "These orders were legally authorized." I turned my head slowly, letting the weight of the silence stretch. Legally authorized? By whom, Brenda? You had no quorum, no resident vote, and now you've dragged a pregnant woman from a public pool and signed a patrol order without authority. Gasps flickered like sparks through the crowd. Melissa stepped forward from the front row, holding her toddler close, and shouted, "She threatened to fine me for hanging a car seat to dry on my balcony." The HOA president swung toward her. "This is a smear campaign." Phones caught every frame. The projector glow washed the woman in red in an unflattering pale blue light. Klein lifted a hand. "Ms. Holt, sit down." The sheriff's deputy moved closer, not touching her, just making his presence undeniable. She hesitated, then squared her shoulders, voice cracking. "This is my board." "No," Thomas said suddenly, loud enough to carry. His hands shook, but his voice didn't. "It's our board. You threatened to ruin me if I didn't shut up. I'm done staying quiet." The crowd erupted, not just cheers but chants, ragged at first, then stronger. "Recall! Recall! Recall!" Brenda tried to speak, but the chant swallowed her words. She turned to the young lawyer behind her, but his eyes were fixed on the floor. I stepped to the microphone, waited for the noise to crest and dip, then spoke clear and low. "Everyone here has seen the documents. Everyone here knows what happened. This isn't about me anymore. It's about what you want for your neighborhood." I held up a single paper, the recall petition Thomas and I had drafted. "Tonight, with the county watching, you can sign this. You can start the vote that removes this board legally and replaces it with one that serves you." The roar this time wasn't ragged. It was unified. People surged forward, reaching for pens, for the clipboard Thomas held up like a torch. The HOA president lunged toward me. "You can't," Klein's voice cut through. "Ms. Holt, that's enough." The deputy stepped between us, calm but firm, and she stopped short, breath ragged. Her hands trembled. I met her eyes, steady. "You did this to yourself. You thought no one would challenge you. You were wrong." Behind me, neighbors were already lining up to sign. Melissa was first, pen scratching across the page. Thomas followed, then a half dozen more. Phones streamed every signature, every raised hand. The projector still cast the patrol directive on the wall, Brenda's signature glowing larger than life above her hunched shoulders. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Not the hush of intimidation, but the quiet of a shift in power. Klein's voice filled it. "The county will continue its investigation. In the meantime, residents have the right to self-governance under state statute. This meeting is adjourned." I stepped back from the microphone. My hands weren't trembling anymore. I could feel Emily's eyes on me from the back, steady and proud. As people cheered, the HOA president turned and pushed through the crowd, shoulders tight, hair falling out of its perfect bun. No one moved aside for her. She had to edge her way past the same people she'd threatened for months. Phones stayed trained on her until the doors swung shut behind her. The rec center hummed with a new energy, not fear, but ownership, the kind of energy that changes things. The porch boards creaked under my boots as I stepped outside. The air smelled like rain, even though the sky was clear. A storm had passed without a drop falling. Across the street, neighbors still stood in small clusters, talking in low, excited voices. Phones glowed in their hands, but no one was streaming now. It wasn't about performance anymore. It was about what came next. Emily sat on the wicker chair, a blanket over her knees even though the evening was warm. She rested a hand on her belly, thumb moving in slow circles. When she looked up at me, her smile was quiet but fierce. "You did it," she said. I leaned on the porch railing, feeling the weight of the night settle over me. "We did it," I said. Thomas, Melissa, everyone who signed. Klein showing up at the right time. It was never just me. Across the street, Thomas shook hands with Klein before heading home. The security badge he'd worn for years looked different now. Not a chain, but a choice. The county's press release had gone out an hour ago. Formal investigation, possible criminal charges, Immediate suspension of the board's authority pending recall vote. It was exactly what I'd wanted, but hadn't dared to believe would happen so quickly. The pool lights glimmered through the trees like distant stars. For months, that place had been a flashpoint, a sanctuary turned weapon. Tonight, it had been the stage where everything cracked open. I thought of Brenda's face in the projector glow, the crowd chanting, "Recall," Thomas stepping forward to speak. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered Emily gasping by the edge of the pool, water streaming down her arms, and the sympathy evaporated. Emily reached out her hand. I took it, sitting beside her. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm fine," she said softly. "Better than fine. For the first time, I feel like we're safe here." The word safe caught in my chest. That's what this had always been about. Not property values, not rules on paper. Safety. The right to exist without fear in our own neighborhood. Out on the street, someone started a cheer. Others joined in, ragged but joyful. It swelled and faded, leaving a hum of conversation. "They're already planning a new board," Emily said. "Thomas told me they're going to put your name forward." I laughed, low and tired. "One fight at a time." She squeezed my hand. "You've got them believing again." I looked at the pool lights one more time. In my mind, I saw them not as a stage, but as a beacon. The thing that had drawn all of us out of our houses, forced us to see what was happening. A symbol of life and safety. When the recall succeeded, that pool would belong to the community again. It would be what it was meant to be, a place for kids and parents and neighbors, not a trap for rules and fines. I pulled out my phone, not to stream, but to post a single photo. The signed recall petition, Thomas's signature on top. Under it I wrote, "Tonight our neighborhood took itself back." I hit post and set the phone face down. The porch boards were cool against my palms. The street was still alive, but calmer now, like a tide going out. For the first time in months, I felt the weight slide off my shoulders. I turned to Emily. "Whatever happens next, we're not alone anymore." She nodded. "No, we're not." I looked straight into the phone camera one more time, hit record, and spoke low and steady. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now and share your story in the comments. This isn't just my fight, it's yours too. I stopped recording and set the phone down again. The sky above us was streaked with orange and deep blue, the kind of color you only get after a storm. Inside the house, our unborn child kicked. Emily smiled at the movement, eyes glistening. I reached for her hand and squeezed, anchoring myself in that moment. This wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning.